Hello, and welcome to another episode of Joy and Gratitude. I am here with my wonderful co host, Ms. Beth Mercurio. And Beth, as always, what is the magic topic of the day?
Today, we're going to talk about fear and how fear can hold us back. And are there ways in which we can talk about why fear holds us back, what fear even is? I mean, I think of all the times where when someone's talking and I can sense something's happening for them, whether it be a client or a friend or a family member, and I just have this instinct to go, what are you afraid of? That so many times fear plays a role in how we show up, in choices that we make. And if we can at least understand fear a little bit better, and that's what I want to spend a little bit of time talking about, uh, can we then maybe choose a different choice, which is always what we say. The one thing we always have is choice. So if we know that we're fearful, can we still choose to move forward in fear? And this, I feel like this is weaved through a lot of our episodes where we've talked about courage is fear walking, a Brene Brown comment that I use all the time. It's like walking in fear is amazing. Or maybe actually I say that and it might be Susan David. I think I got it wrong the last time. But this idea of, yeah, we can look it up. But the idea is walking in fear. Like, of course, you're never going to not be afraid. But how do we use fear to actually motivate us and move us into places that maybe we didn't realize were going to help us to grow? So, Nia, talk to me about what that brings up for you when I talk about, yeah, when you're like, I'm scared to talk about it. No, what's going on for you when we talk about fear and being afraid and how to maybe lean into that instead of away from it?
Fear is the first thing we're taught
Mm.
when we are downright infants and toddlers. Our parents are always, no, don't do that. That's going to happen. Don't do that because that may happen. And we are born fearless, fearless totally. We don't know the limitations in life when we're born. But as we go through life, we're taught to be in fear. We're, there's some justifiable fear. We should be scared of falling off a cliff. We should be scared of fire. We should be scared of many things that children, will do because they have no fear whatsoever, climbing up a bookcase and jumping off because they think they're Superman, all those things. But reality is, it is a taught behavior. And then it becomes the norm of protection. You see, we start protecting ourselves with our fear so that we don't have to challenge ourselves or we don't have to deal with a situation that may be uncomfortable.
Say more
Fear,
about that. Fear as
yeah,
protection.
fear as protection means that I am scared of what might happen. Therefore, I will not engage. And I'm protecting myself from what may happen. You see, it's all in our head.
Mm.
When you hear people that they just are overthinking. Overthinking is fear. Overthinking is living a situation that has not occurred, but you're letting your fear manage the situation's outcome before it even occurred.
Can you say that
So,
again? Can you say that again?
yes. So fear is when you're in overthinking a situation, and that's one example of fear. You're living a situation in your head that has not occurred yet, but you're managing the situation based on your known fears. And that is the way you assume the outcome. So when you show up, the outcome is going to be negative because you're already entering with the negative energy and your expectations are that which you are afraid of. So you're going to make it happen because that is what you are trying to do. I'll give you an example. You get an email from your boss, and the boss says, I want to talk to you. Now, You don't know what they want to talk about. But immediately, 17 different things play out in your head. And you keep saying, oh my God, the business is not doing well. Is this my, I'm going to get fired? Am I going to be downsized? Oh my God, I didn't finish that project at 10:45. As I said, I gave it to him at 11 o'clock. Is he mad that I was 15 minutes late? Am I going to be reprimanded? And we go
Mhm.
through all these scenarios. Now, we have no idea what the conversation is going to be, but we go down the spiral of all these fearful potential scenarios that when we come into that meeting, our energy, our presence is, we have this, even, the person sees you and they're like, what's wrong with you? Because we're coming in fear. We're coming in defense. We're coming in expecting the worst. Now, imagine if we actually taught ourselves what is rational fear versus fear that just makes us feel comfortable so that we don't have to address what's hard.
Mm, that's interesting. I was still I was still with you in this idea of this overthinking.
Mhm.
Gosh, I feel like everybody I know is in a place of overthinking, especially right now. There is so much fear around so many things. And so I think I didn't know that I was going to name that, but I think we should, which is sort of, we're also in a moment where there's layers of fear. And we talk about a lot self leadership, connecting to self, and then connecting to others, and then the larger community. And I think that we all have our own fears that are personally driven. They're driven by, you mentioned it. And everyone's is different, honestly, because as you mentioned, two people's parents or whoever raised them, their fears are what are put onto those children, right? We talk about that. So generationally, the fears that you've received then get passed on and passed on. So yours may be different than mine. We might just have grown up with different fears kind of layered onto us. And now there's this new additional, maybe not new, life is always kind of challenging. There's probably fears at some sort of a low frequency at all times around what's happening in our world or even in our community. Let's just go from outside of our personal
External
lives
fear.
to our, yeah, the external, which can include, gosh, as we're thinking about it, there's so many things. If you just go one layer outside of you, you go to your family, the fear that something might happen to your children, the fear that something might happen to your spouse, the fear that something might happen to a friend. The minute you go outside of your personal family, the reality is those things do happen right outside. So some friend of yours may experience some really sad tragedy and then all of a sudden you have a new fear. Maybe you didn't even know that was possible. You're like that
Yep.
wasn't even in my headspace that could happen, but then it happens. So now you've layered on that next kind of outer field that says not only my family but my friends and my community. I've seen things happen in that space that now causes me fear that could happen to me. And then you go outside one more layer to the
Hmm.
macro, which is our world. And honestly, you say, okay, maybe I was just going to say, I feel safe in this country. I'll pause on that. We'll just move to, let's use an example of another country that is clearly unsafe. And sadly, we have very unsafe places to live. So again, you go, wait a minute, if that's happening right now in our current, where we live in our year, in our lifetime, there are people that fear for their lives. That
Hmm.
is happening all the time. That's a whole nother layer of fear. You go, because if that can happen there, that can happen to
Yep.
me. So
That's right.
all of a sudden, we've got layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of fear that cause us to do the overthinking. But when you
Hmm.
said that, I thought, gosh, the piece of that that's really got me kind of creating a little bit of this insight, is the energy that we waste
Oh,
and
yes,
in that fear. Because when people say don't worry twice, it's that same thing. We've talked about that before. It's the same thing. The reality is there's very little we can do to control one of those outside things happening, whether it's going to happen to us, to somebody else, to the world, to our country. So if we spend energy worrying about it, it may never happen. And then all that energy that we were spent in fear and in worry, we are not able to put into something that gives us a fulfilling and thriving life, right? That's the fact. So energy spent in fear is energy not spent somewhere else.
that's right.
And it doesn't mean that we might not need that energy. That we may have, I mean, things happen to people all the time. We've talked about that on our podcast. Life is hard and really traumatic tragedy things happen, and then you need to take that energy and funnel it into how to manage and navigate that. But imagine if you're already depleted and you have very little energy because you've spent the energy that you have in your life worrying about some future thing. And I think that's where the power lies. We always try to come back to where is our agency? Where is our power? And for this, I think it lies in understanding where when you've got fear, understanding how it manifests in you as a human. When you feel fear, is it anxiety? What is it? Does your heart race? Do you get hot? Do you find yourself spinning and spiraling? Whatever that is, if you can notice it, pay attention. We talk about this a lot, and say, I have to do something that will get me out of this moment of fear and anxiety. Maybe that will bring me calm. Maybe it's breathing. Maybe it's walking outside. Maybe it's calling a friend. There's a million ways in which we have to identify ways to get out of the spiral and get out of that anxious moment so that we can make a choice to put our energy somewhere else, to refuel us, to rejuvenate us, so we are ready for whatever moment comes, because we don't actually get to choose. We just have to know that what is, and how do I, in this moment here, make the best use of my energy?
You know, as you were talking and you mentioned generational, um, I think this is one that right now and always is one that has to be spoken about. I had an incredible conversation with my mother yesterday, and she wanted to talk to me because she wanted to apologize that she had kind of poured her fears upon me and had basically limited my navigation of life based on her fears. And, we had this great conversation, and I said to her, I'm good. I sought the positive in what you were doing. During it, it was painful. But I understood that because of it, it made me a very strong woman.
Mm.
It made me make very conscious, intentional choices based on what you had taught me, even though maybe I would have done it differently. Doesn't matter. That's the way it was done. But you see, where I'm going with this, and I'm sure the participants are saying, what the heck? What's she going with that? I'm going with we impart fear on our children, on our teams, on those around us, and influence with fear. And it doesn't come across as fear, it comes across as um, standard beliefs. It can come across as gospel. It can come across in so many different ways, but it is a way of control. And we have to be very conscious that it is not our job to try to control everything. But fear puts you in the realm of wishing to control.
Mm.
And what we do have to do is provide the insight to options and why there could be some potential harm if you go in a certain direction, but not try to control the avoidance of that direction. And that's where I came across, that's what came out of that conversation with my mother, is that I understood that what she was trying to do is trying to control the situation so I didn't peril in a situation where she could have gotten the same results if she would have explained her concern and then giving me the strength and the empowerment to make the right decision for myself.
Mm.
And I say this because I do believe that we are in a quandary today that either you are believing in a certain way or you're not believing in a certain way. And it doesn't matter which way it is. It's totally inappropriate when you don't let a person make their intentional choice.
Mm.
It is
It's
all
that
fear
I
based.
it is and it's this idea around seeking understanding, asking questions, and this it really resonated when you talked about the need to be in control.
Mm,
And I think I will hope, hopefully my daughters will listen and I can ask right now for forgiveness that when I was similar to your mother in a controlling way, telling them they couldn't do something, or that I didn't think it was a good idea, or making a comment that was unsolicited, that came out of my fear, not theirs, mine, that if I could flip it, just as you mentioned so beautifully around had your mother explained what her fear was, come from a place of here's where my concern is. And I know it's mine. It's not yours. It might not be yours. It's mine. And I just feel like I need to say something or share it with you, but I support whatever decision you make that I want you to know that I love, I care. Like there's a million different ways, but I think what an incredible learning if going forward, again, I don't get to go backwards, but if going forwards, I seek understanding. Why are you making that decision? Help me understand why you think that's the best choice for you. And typically that's not what happens because we're so hardwired into our own fears that we don't
mhm.
even try to understand and seek understanding for why maybe they're making a different choice. And I will say that on my best days when I ask more questions than I do try to control and make them choose something I want to make me feel better, to make me more comfortable in my skin.
Yeah, because you've been keeping them safe.
That's right. And honestly, now I will say I really try to hold my mouth like with I mean, it's like a real, I almost feel like I literally have to put like something over my mouth. They don't see it, but it's like this duct tape of clear duct tape that's like, "Do not speak," even though, like, every part of me wants to speak.
Mine's silver. I like the
So
silver type.
yes, like,
Um,
just
you
don't
know,
right, like, don't say anything unless and they know this now, and I'm saying this is after years of me now trying to seek understanding, trying to hold back and not let my fears direct and control them, is around safety.
yeah.
So I will say to them, you can be really mad, you can think that was totally uncalled for, you can but if there is safety where I actually feel like there is a physical harm that can happen to you or someone that you're telling me about, I'm going to get involved. And that's partly just and that's why I think it is important, this is like a nuance that I think I want to say out loud, that parents, elders, let's just say elders, people with more experience, they do have experience on their side. And so it's not to discount all of it, but it's to say there are moments where, yes, people with more experience in certain areas should try to control the situation, help do something different, because you may just not know better. You might not know enough. You might not even be able to handle the situation based on whatever it is. But I am very clear if it's physical safety, that I doesn't matter what I'm gonna like make that phone call, do that thing, and be controlling. It may come across as controlling, but at least I'm very clear about that moment. I will say all those other moments of duct tape are really hard, but the beauty is when I can ask the question instead of control. Often I will also learn something. I
Mhm.
will learn that there are other ways to look at things. I will learn that maybe there's a lot of upside that I didn't even see because I was so caught in the fear of what could go wrong that I didn't see what could go right. Or I didn't see, how about we just talk about learning mindset again? I
Yeah.
didn't see that even in the worst thing, there's something to be learned, right? There's something that you're going to learn. There's some lesson that maybe we don't even know we're supposed to have. And if it stops us from even engaging and being present in life as it is, then we're missing something.
Yeah. And we also have to go back to understanding that we never have the full picture. We have facets of pictures. We have the side that we have viewed, which is flawed because it's based on our limited beliefs when we're experiencing it. We have the other facet of the other person, and then we had what happened. And even when we are reacting to somebody's story, it's only their story. So we don't know the whole thing. And a lot of times we're reacting to their feelings of the story, not the actual story.
Mhm.
So we got to be very cautious. And I love that you said when I'm asking questions, that empowers the situation. Because when we do ask questions, then that individual that we're spending time with can get out of their feelings and really start thinking about what happened. What is the true moment? What actually is what needs to be solved? Because they got to go back to facts and not feelings.
Mm.
And that is the hardest things because we are emotional human beings. But in order for us to move past fear, which is an emotion, one that has a great deal of impact physiologically, mentally, all over us, we must get down to the granular core.
Mm.
And that starts with facts and dealing with those facts so that we can make a choice or open the door for someone else to make a choice.
I think you're reminding me of the question I ask a lot of, more of my clients and people I work with. But I will say, first, what are you afraid of? Can they vocalize what they're afraid of? Sometimes they can't. Sometimes
Mhm.
they don't know that they're afraid, and then we
Right.
move towards what they're afraid of. And oftentimes the other question that's kind of piggybacked onto that is, what is the worst thing that can happen?
Yes.
Because if you can go to that, and this is what you just talked about, facts versus emotion. If the fact is the worst thing that can happen is I can get fired. Okay. Then we go, all right, well, what could that look like? Like, will you be okay? What will happen
Mhm.
when that happens? And then we're able to really look at the facts of it, the emotions of getting let go or fired. I mean, that's a real thing. We can talk about that. But is there anything worse than that? Like what's the worst of the worst? And if you can get somebody to actually try to think through what that is from a logical standpoint, often then you're able to backcast into, where are the emotions, what is that leading to, are there
Mhm.
actions they can take if that's the worst thing, are there things that they could be doing to not have that happen. I do think it kind of helps to frame up
So,
getting agency again. If that's the worst thing, then are there things that you can do to not have that happen, all of a sudden there's power and energy back again instead of like I am frozen in fear and I can't make a move or I don't know how to act or I'm not sure what to say. Those questions can be very relevant.
Absolutely. And, that brings us back to the overthinking if we can reframe that narrative. Because when you're overthinking, you are getting to what's the worst that can happen and dealing with the worst that can happen and giving yourself the empowerment to know that that is not the end of life. That is not the end of everything. It's just a point in time that you must maneuver. And being able to be comfortable with the worst that can happen from an intellectual perspective lets you have the power to walk in with presence of wholeness and being able to handle that situation. Now, your energy is not an energy of a victim, it's an energy of someone that can handle what's ahead. And that is the differentiator when you own your fear and you understand it. And when it needs to be shushed, you shush it. And when it needs to be acknowledged, you acknowledge it.
Yeah, I love that. I have a reading. Can I read something?
Absolutely.
So this was the topic, and I think some people know that I have this incredible little pocket Pima Chodron. It's so worn out that it's like edges are folded in, and but I try to open it daily and see, what's the message. And this was the topic, and I opened to go to the places that scare you.
Mm.
And it's a little bit long, but I'm going to read it.
Oh, please.
Often in our daily lives, we panic. We feel heart palpitations and stomach rumblings because we are arguing with someone or because we had a beautiful plan and it is not working out. How do we walk into those dramas? How do we deal with those demons, which are basically our hopes and fears? How do we stop struggling against ourselves?
Mm.
The revered Tibetan Buddhist master Machig Labdron, sorry if I didn't say that correctly, advise us to go to places that scare us. But how do we do that? We're trying to learn not to split ourselves between our good side and our bad side, between our pure side and our impure side. The elemental struggle is with our feeling of being wrong, being with our guilt and shame at what we are. That's what we have to befriend. The point is that we can dissolve the sense of dualism between us and them, between this and that, between here and there, by moving towards what we find difficult and wish to push away.
That sums up every single thing we said. How timely is that?
It
That
needed to be read.
is, yes, it needs to be read and it needs to be cited for our listeners to refer back to when they're having their moment that fear is just taking place and they can't find their way. But just know you can always release the fear. And to that, I'm going to go with the song for this episode. And of course, it's going to be Fearless, but not
Mm.
from where you expect it. We're going to go Fearless by Pink Floyd.
Ooh,
Taking it back, baby, taking it back.
taking it back.
And I'll
Ah,
tell
I
you
love that.
why. Because it's about when you listen to that song, you also understand that fear has a place. And then we also need to know when to release it. To that, let us go to the gratitude box.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. Today is there's
Let's
this
pray.
beautiful kind of
Pink
like
and yeah,
sunrisey,
yeah,
orange, pink,
beautiful.
and the word is hug. Yeah. So I don't I'm a little bit speechless because I just added this to the bag, and it is. I see it as a sign from my dad because this is his rock that he was very adamant about, and you may recall that from other episodes. But I also think it's super relevant. So, dad has a way with his wisdom of sneaking into things, and I think he is sneaking in to say that we fought about hug and embrace as a word, which one? And I think this is his way of saying that we need to hug or embrace fear. Like, don't let it freeze us, let it move us and lean into what scares us. So, leaning in and hugging those are the same. So, let's embrace fear and trust ourselves that we'll be able to navigate whatever comes our way.
How powerful, how wonderful. And just seeing that word and knowing what it means and where it came from, I feel a hug. I feel the hug. So, with that, we're sending hugs to all of you. You can move past your fear and join us for our next episode of Joy and Gratitude. It's coming soon.